all, it's very good that in spite of, let's say, the instinctive center or some malaise in the machine, that you had thoughts about the work. This is a very good sign, reminding you. And I know that in non-duality or in yoga, they talk about this effortlessness and consciousness, that which is aware is effortless awareness. We don't need to make effort in order to be what we are. And it's in the direct path, which is actually, it's more an advanced stage, although now it's thrown around the internet all over as if it's so easy. They talk about actually practicing this effortlessness and just letting go of all efforts and just being. Anyway, so I'm aware of that, and those are good pointers at some point. But actually, at this point, and for a long time, there is effort needed, actually, because we are in the second state. We are asleep from the point of view of consciousness. And so there's all of this being in imagination, being identified, being lazy, being like the instinctive center is not interested in awakening, is not interested in the work, is interested in comfort, pleasure, and survival, and conserving energy. So, and we need to make effort, and make effort to kind of observe, to engage now this other dimension of what we are, to observe the discomfort, to come out of imagination, to observe the unpleasantness in the body. So this is conscious effort. Gurdjieff would call this as a forgotten striving and duty of men. They call it partok duty, which is a conscious labor and intentional suffering necessary, because we are not a complete being as we are. Later, at some later stages, I would say that this sense of remembering oneself may acquire some type of momentum, because we've been so focused on it for so long that it activates itself, and there is let's say, the effort is changing, I would say. But still, there are situations that something is happening and we need to engage some conscious effort. And even in the non-duality world, where they talk about effortless, and in the New Advaita, they speak about, hey, there's nothing to do, there's nowhere to go, there's no doer. The very act of spiritual practice is like a doing, and it's an obstacle. But even there, some wiser people would say that, as long as there's any sense of suffering, any sense of unease, and there's any sense of me, there is work to be done. There is inquiry to be engaged in. And yet the yoga applies, like a good version of yoga is good to not force it. And it requires some kind of effort, conscious effort to relax, basically, to stop. There is some effort to stop being tense, actually.
I would add too, Mihai, that in response to this question, this observation, that effort, we can think of effort is, if you remember our talks about the lower centers, and the lower centers have different levels of attention. They operate with different levels of attention. There can be little or no attention, which is the moving parts of each center, or there can be where our attention is drawn by something. We get sort of fascinated, or wow, look at, we get really drawn into it. And that's more the emotional part of each of the centers. And then there's controlled attention. in our intellectual center, our emotional center, our moving center, instinctive center, where you really taste your food. You do something intricate with your hands using a tool. It requires a more attention, controlled attention. And so we can think of effort, as we talk about it in the fourth way, as controlled attention, or the attention being controlled by the intellectual parts of centers, the higher parts of our centers. And this is what helps bring our focuses, our attention back in the moment, in the present. And then from there, attention can sort of roll up into awareness. And it means now that we have attention doesn't go away, but we're not identified. There's no identification any longer in our attention. So now, instead of our attention just being at the thing, we keep our attention on whatever we're trying to do, but it starts also coming back. We're like reversing the magnetism of attention. So now attention is also at its source, aware. And this is what Ouspensky was trying to imply with his idea of divided attention. You could think of it as divided awareness if you want to, but this idea of attention is now in both places, and it's all along the route also. And so what you described, Wendy, I believe is a moment where, there was very little attention, and then suddenly you remembered to try to be present. And then there was this sort of discombobulation in the centers. Well, wait a minute, what? And this is because we're not accustomed to even controlling our attention, much less our awareness, conscious awareness, consciously not controlling itself, being itself. So this is good. And as Mihai says, this is valuable and necessary, and can be easily overlooked in some teachings. And this is effort. And this is sort of like climbing up the ladder of attention to this place where awareness resides. And so it's very valuable. And what you experience, though, is interesting to observe, because what will also happen is we'll suddenly not even remember to be present. We will become present. And this will actually create confusion in the centers because we're not accustomed to that level of awareness or that level of attention. But it's always good to use these moments to just simply focus on something in the present, in the moment. It can be anything, your movements, what you're looking at, another person. Bringing attention in all of the centers to the present is a way to reach more conscious awareness.
Yeah, I just want to say something quick about this. They say the Sufis or Rumi, that talking about this, that draw near to God and God will draw near to you. So the sense of the spiritual mind, the sense of spiritual me initially is making effort to find the present moment and to find awareness, and this effort, this movement is going to be rewarded. Initially, we need to jumpstart it a lot. Seems like a lot of doing, and initially we may be something that doesn't like that.
Also, effort of this kind creates energy. This is also interesting to observe. It creates energy.